Hey, you're back. Welcome to Season 2 of The People We Meet. My name is Ty Brunner, and I'll be your host. This is a show about ordinary people that have done extraordinary things. I'm glad you're here, and let's get on with it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The People We Meet. Now, today, I have a very special guest. I'm here with Emma Schanz. She was a member of the U.S. national swim team captain for UCLA, an Olympic trial qualifier, and currently the school record holder for the 200-meter individual medley and the 200-meter breaststroke. That's quite a pedigree. Emma, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ty. Happy to be here.
So I like to always start at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Pocatello, Idaho, and we lived there for just a few years, I think until I was about 3 or 4. And then my parents made the move up to Colville, Washington, which is where I spent my entire childhood.
So you grew up there in Colville?
In Colville, yep.
Okay. So you had kind of an unusual background when it comes to your swimming career. First of all, what got you interested in swimming to begin with?
I think really what, piqued my interest in swimming was my brother and my parents. Growing up in Colville, it's a very small town, and I always knew that I loved to swim in the lakes. I loved to run, just be outside in general. And then, when I was 4 years old, there was a summer swim team program in Colville, and my mom and dad figured, hey, let's see if the kids like swimming. And so they signed both my brother and I up. And from there, we just had such a love and passion for the sport that we really didn't stop. And I think that looking back, I have so many great memories of the community and my parents and my brother and my grandma. And it was just such a great experience. So that's kind of how I got into swimming. And then from there, it just really took off.
So were you influenced at all by watching the Olympics? And because I remember I was really into watching our swim team. How about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I started swimming at such a young age that throughout time, when the Olympics would come around, I would absolutely love to sit down and be glued to the TV. And I always really looked up to Michael Phelps. I think one time we got a magazine with his picture on it, and somehow we got it. I can't remember how we got it signed from him. And then we put it up on our wall, and we still have it in the house today. And he was such an idol for us growing up.
What's funny? Because I was a huge Phelps fan, but what made that year for me in the Olympics was Lochtey's come from behind when he just barely got in there for the gold. And I remember I was standing in front of my TV, jumping up and down. I was losing my mind.
Oh, yeah. No, I have so many great memories of that. And I just love competition so much, and I think that's why I loved watching the Olympics, is that it was such a competition. And that feeling that you just described is something that I really carried through my entire swimming career, of just the adrenaline rush of, the love for competition.
So how old were you when the swim camp and
Yeah, I was 4 years old, I think, when my parents first put us in the water. And before then, I remember my mom telling me this one story of my mom and my dad grew up in the Sandpoint area, and they took us to the city beach one time. And I remember my mom telling me a story of how I was just a teeny tiny baby, and I was already out in the water swimming, and everyone around her was like, that is not normal. Like, kids that young normally don't swim that well. And so I think that, my parents saw just the love of the water for me at such a young age. And I think that's really what initiated them putting both my brother and I in swim team.
So you showed a little promise. You were a little water moccasin right out of the chute.
I think so. Yeah, I gave a little away.
So you're 4 years old. So what was your family like? What What was it like growing up in the Schanz house?
It was awesome. I have such great memories of my childhood, and it really boils down just to how tight-knit my family and I were, especially growing up in Colville. It's a very small town, don't have a ton of indoor activities. There's no malls or anything like that. So most of my childhood, we spent outside. And so just so many great memories of, summers on the beach, and then we were snowboarding in the winter. And yeah, I look back with many fond memories of my childhood.
So I just thought of this because I was talking about this with my daughter just the other day. When you said you were close knit, now I know you guys spent a lot of time doing stuff outside, going to the beach and snowboarding and all that. What was it that made your family tight?
I think it's just the environment that my parents created for us. It was just such a safe, exciting place to be. And so I think that's really simply all that it boils down to be is the environment that they created for us.
Did you guys sit down and eat dinner together every night? I mean, was that...
You know it, of course.
Okay, because that was kind of where the conversation with my daughter went. She said, sometimes I feel like I can really tell who the kids are that sit down with their parents and they've got the whole dinner time thing going on like we do, and who the kids are that eat in front of the TV or by themselves in their room, and anyway, so it was kind of on my mind anyway. So when you said that, there's a lot to be said about the environment that you come from.
Absolutely.
Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, it's that tightness in the family that it seems like it opens a lot of doors, and it sounds like it did kind of for you too.
It absolutely does, yeah. And I think it just gives a lot of insight too into how everyone's lives is going, and just making sure that you do have that time to check in. And I think it's a super important piece to keeping a tight-knit family.
You're still pretty tight?
Yeah, absolutely.
And were your parents athletes?
My parents did sports growing up. I don't think to the extent that my brother and I did. But I think they did a couple high school sports and things like that.
Okay. What? Was it just the one brother?
Yep, just one brother.
Older or younger?
He is 3 years older than me.
And what was his sport? Do you want to give him a shout out?
Sure. I'll say hi, Dylan. He already knows that he was such a big part of my swimming career and swimming journey. And I'm just so excited that I was able to have that relationship with him growing up and still carry it into today.
So he kind of he kind of ran the vanguard for you for swimming?
Just in general, honestly, I always wanted to do exactly what he wanted to do, which I think probably annoyed him a little bit, as the annoying little sister for so long. I remember for school pictures one year, Dylan didn't smile in the picture because he just lost some of his teeth. And so I had pictures the next day, and of course I didn't want to do a teeth smile because I wanted to be exactly like him. So I would do things like that. So
even though you had all your teeth?
Even though I had all my teeth. So
So now we'll get there. So tell me a little bit more. I know you got interested in swimming, but what was your childhood like? What did you like to do? Who did you hang out with? What were your...
I would say what my childhood looked like was, again, just a lot of time outside. In Colville, it's such a small community where everyone kind of knows everyone. So I kept a very small group of friends, and really what we liked to do was just be outside, go swimming, hang out with each other. But because I started swimming at such a young age, that did consume a lot of my time. But in a good way, it kept me focused and it kept me out of trouble, and it really gave me something to work for and look forward to. And I just look back on that time with so much with fond sentiment.
So nobody looked at you and said, saw you paddling around out in the deep end, way underaged, and said, we got to get this kid ready for the Olympics.
I mean, I think maybe my parents did. I think that they wanted my brother and I to try a lot of different sports. I also did gymnastics and soccer and cross country. So I tried quite a few things out, but it always came back to swimming.
What? That's a pretty good array of sports. Which one did you find the most difficult? Was there a sport that you struggled in?
I would have to say running of any sort, so track or cross country. It was always the best cross training for swimming, just to do something other than stare at the bottom of a pool. And because I did find it so difficult, I always wanted to do more of it, just to really push myself.
Well, my daughter would agree with you. She does not like running. So paint the picture for me. What did your training environment actually look like day to day?
Yeah, so I'll take a little bit of a step back and go back to the summer swim team. So the summer club would happen obviously every summer, and we would compete with teams up in Canada.
And how old are you now?
And so I did summer swim probably from about 4 years old until 12 or 13. So every single summer, my parents were driving my brother and I up into Canada to compete around that region. And so we did that for many years. And that's really where I started to improve. I started to fall in love with the sport more. And then as I started to get older, that's when we started to have serious conversations of we need to, and I want to take this further than just a summer swim club, just because, again, we were only competing in the summer and it wasn't year round. And just competing up in Canada, it was hard to get exposure to U.S. colleges, which is really where I set my sights on.
At how old?
I started thinking about that probably when I was 12 or so.
There's not a ton of 12-year-olds that are thinking about where they're going to college, but go ahead.
Well, I think that I saw swimming as an out in a sense. I knew that I wanted to be somewhere else than Colville for the rest of my life. And so I really saw swimming as my gateway to greater things. And I knew that I could potentially get a scholarship down the road. And so I think in combination of both having a love for the sport, love for competition, love for winning, and then also that on the side of potentially using this as a way out to potentially get my college paid for at the time is really what drove me. So when I was, around 12 or 13, that's when we started to look around at other clubs. And the nearest swim club was Spokane. So it's about an hour and a half drive from Colville to Spokane. And at the time, my family and I, we really didn't want to move to Spokane just for swimming. And so, we're looking at how can we make this work without moving to Spokane. And really the only solution was swimming in a hotel pool. So in Colville, there's a place called Benny's Inn, and it's a hotel that has a pool. The pool is only 20 yards long, and a standard competition size is 25 yards. So it's not even up to regulation. And so my family and I were like, if we want to do this and stay in Colville, this is how we're going to do it, is we're going to train in this hotel pool. And so that's what my brother and I did. We started training on our own after school in the hotel pool. And then as I started to progress, we started to train in the mornings. So it'd be doubles almost every single day.
Wow. Did you look forward to those?
I had a love-hate relationship with it. I loved the grind, I have to say. I truly loved waking up and I loved pushing myself so hard every single day because I knew that's what it was going to take in order to compete with my competition. So I did enjoy it, and I loved having something to work for at that time.
So tell me a little bit about Benny's. How many lanes were there?
I wouldn't even really say that there were lanes. So in a typical swimming pool, you do have lane lines to separate the lanes. But in Benny's, there was a rope with a couple buoys on it that my brother and I would put up, and it would somewhat separate us from the water aerobics or the pool parties or the kids that was going on. And so oftentimes would be dodging kids and dodging balls that were happening after school. So it was technically 3 lanes, if you want to call them lanes, but really we were stuck to one.
I can just see all these little kids in there flapping around and cannonballing and
oh yeah, that's exactly how it was.
oh my gosh. So now you kind of indicated, and then you in your chase, your sights set on a scholarship told me that, you didn't come from money. There was nobody forking out a bunch of money for you to go do these things. What couldn't you do that most swimmers take for granted, or what other advantages were afforded other swimmers that you didn't have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest one being a standard size pool and an actual team that others would get to train with, because really it was just my brother and I that would be training with each other day in and day out. And I did want to mention that we were part of a swim club in Spokane, because we would train with them on Saturdays, would come down on Friday and then train with the team on Saturday. And we'd also go to competitions with the Spokane team. So we had that to look forward to. So we did have some sense of team, but I will say that most other swimmers have so many resources available to them. Like I said, the standard size pool, a coach to write workouts for you, a full weight room at their disposal, maybe a nutritionist. Swimmers go all out in order to get just a little bit better. And I realized that at a very young age that I didn't have those things just because of where I was at. And that's really what I focused on was I saw that as an advantage almost. I said, I don't have these things, so I'm going to have to work that much harder. And that's really what pushed me day in and day out. And I think kind of going back to the doubles, it's like I realized that most kids at that age weren't doing doubles, or maybe the extent of the training that I was doing. And so I just loved putting in the work, and I loved pushing myself each and every day, just because I knew I didn't have the resources that others did, but I was still able to, take what I did have and use it to my full advantage.
So you specifically mentioned the nutritionist and the full gym. So in lieu of those, what did you do instead? I mean, did you figure out your own diet and stick to that? And how did you what was your your tertiary training? What did you do to stay in shape besides swim?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of when speaking about a nutritionist, I remember that I did speak to one every once in a while, but it wasn't an everyday thing, and I didn't have a super strict regimen. So I do feel like in hindsight, that's probably an area that I could have done better on, and I don't think that I realized how much of an impact it had. And so I think that, my parents did the best that they could, and they fed me great, and I had enough energy to get everything done that I needed to. But in hindsight, I'm sure I could have done better in that aspect. But for the weight room, we had a little setup in our garage that I would go out and I would use as a makeshift gym. And then I remember having my dad buy me a tractor tire, and every day after I got done with swim practice, I'd go down and I would flip the tire down our very long driveway and all the way back. And I kind of used that as a dry land exercise.
So you were kind of like Rocky Balboa training in Siberia, whereas Ivan Drago was training at the...
I think that's what I kind of imagined myself to be at the time, just to keep myself going.
That's kind of cool, man. What were your ideas of nutrition at the time too? Because for an awful lot of people, it's like, I mean, depending on their education, it's 3 full meals with the same amount of food on both sides of the plate being a balanced meal. How did you eat?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of the mentality that I had, was just eat 3 full meals a day, with snacks in between. I don't think that I realized how much protein I probably needed for the amount of exercise that I was doing. Just because when I really was in the full swing of things, in high school, I was doing at least an hour in the morning, an hour of dry land, and then 2 hours after school. And so that's a lot of hours of exercise,
Yeah.
and a lot of caloric intake that I needed. However, I probably needed more protein. And I think back then too, the information was not as readily available as it is today. So I graduated high school in 2015. So of course, we had the internet and all that. But I think that I was spending my time training rather than educating on the diet that I really needed. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
What was the kid stuff that you did? I mean, you trained your ass off, obviously. What'd you do? What was your other fun stuff? Like what kept you young? What kept you a kid?
Oh man. That's a tough one to answer just because I do feel like I was outside all the time. I was not really a kid who would sit inside and watch TV. I used to love to read. I used to love to play games with my family, but we had very minimal screen time.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't a bad thing.
Definitely
But
not.
so I'm going to skip the next question because I think this one's more pertinent. So what did this cost you? Like this whole pursuit, like socially, emotionally, personally, like, how many dances did you miss and the proms and, dates or just going out with friends or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that I had not really reflected much on while I was in it. It wasn't really until after I had graduated college even that I looked back, but I never feel like I lost anything throughout this process. I feel like it was such a learning process and there's really nothing that I would change about it. I feel like I had to choose between, again, school dances or hanging out with friends. And it was either that or going to swim practice, and I would always choose swim practice because I was that driven and I knew what it took to get to the level that I wanted to be at. And so I don't feel like I lost anything throughout the process. I really do feel like swimming shaped me to be who I am today. And for a long time, I kind of took swimming as my identity in a sense because that's all that I did. And that was really my whole world. And so it wasn't until after college where it was almost like a loss of identity because I didn't have that strict regimen that I had for so many years. So I think that is something that not only myself, but a lot of my teammates too from college had a hard time transitioning between because the sport is all that you know for so many years, and then all of a sudden one day it's
not there.
You're without it. So yeah.
So who was your friend during this time? Like we kind of we brushed on this earlier, but did you have a best friend growing up that like
Of
kind of
course.
knew what the stakes were? And
Yeah. I have to say my best friend in childhood was Megan Lee, and she absolutely understood what I was trying to achieve. And she also did swim team for a couple of years too, just for a couple of years at a pretty young age. So she was familiar with how many hours it took. And I do feel like with the support of her and my family, my parents and my brother, I never felt like I was being judged or I was missing out on anything. Everyone was just there to support me.
So Megan,
yeah. And we're still friends to this day.
I was gonna say, well, you can give her a shout out.
Yes,
if you like.
absolutely.
So that ingrained an awful lot in you. Like, like you said, you wake up one day and it's not there anymore, but all those lessons learned and all that discipline and, obviously you understand the value of habit forming. How did that carry over into the life that you lead now?
Absolutely. I do feel like so many lessons that I learned at such a young age, I not only took it from high school and I even more so refined it in college But then today, I work in corporate America in advertising. Fortunately, I am a remote worker. But one thing that I think so many of my employers value is just how I'm able to manage my time and how I'm self-motivated. I don't have to be told to do things. I'm more proactive than reactive. And I do feel like all of these lessons that I learned because of swimming has just helped me tremendously. And yeah, it really has shaped me into the person that I am today.
Because I think there's probably an awareness there. Like, okay, I did this. I know how hard work pays off. I know how building habits pays off.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, self-discipline is something that I learned at such a young age, and I have just, used it throughout my entire life. And I think there's a lot to be said of telling yourself you're going to do something and then actually following through on it.
What's something that you might not have done or succeeded at doing had you not taken that? And I know that was, it's kind of on the spot, but is there something that comes to mind that maybe you wouldn't have pulled off if you didn't have that instilled in you?
I would take it back a little bit just to graduating college. I think being a student athlete is tremendously hard. I mean, there's just so much time management, self-discipline, self-motivation that really goes into it. You don't have your parents there helping you through it. You don't have your friends that you're used to. I know that I'm kind of jumping ahead, but just going to school thousands of miles away was definitely an adjustment. And I don't think that I could have made it through without everything that I learned at such a young age to help me through.
How was that when you made that jump thousands of miles away? I mean, coming from a close-knit family, was it hard?
It was definitely hard. So like I said, it was my brother and I who were training in the hotel pool for so many years. And then given he's older, he went off to college and he actually swam at a smaller school in Minnesota. And so after he left, I truly was on my own in the hotel pool for another 2 years. But at that time, that's really where things started to take off for me at more of a national level. That's when I made the U.S. national team. And so I got flown out to Colorado Springs and I was able to train there. And I got to meet Katie Ledecky, Missy Franklin, Ryan Lochte, Michael Phelps. Like all of them were at the training center in Colorado Springs. And things like that just really inspired me so much because the idols that I watched on TV, I was swimming right next side to. And that's a pretty crazy leap. And I think it was like a pinch me moment almost of I've worked so hard my whole life for things like this. And I was given that opportunity to be on that U.S. national team and really be alongside my idols. So I think having that just pushed me and propelled me even further. And right around that same time, too, I started getting recruited by colleges. And that was another crazy process that I don't think a lot of people talk about or really realize how almost stressful it can be. While it is very exciting, it's also a very big life decision at such a young age. I want to say I was probably 15 at the time. And so I had 150 different colleges offer me full rides at that time. And so it was overwhelming.
Holy cow. So backing up just a little bit, this is that, like that first day that this is going back home to Colville at Benny's.
Okay.
That first day that you showed up to keep on swimming and doing your thing when your brother wasn't there anymore. Did you miss that?
I did miss his support. And I think it really reinforced no one is here watching. No one is going to tell you to get in the pool. I mean, there's McDonald's right across the road. Like, what's keeping me from going over there?
And that's what I was going to ask you next. I mean, was it tempting to be like, my little guy on my shoulder here he's not here right now. I don't have to do this if I don't feel like it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I oftentimes would be, 5 a.m. and I'd be showing up to the pool and I would just sit down and take a deep breath and I would say, man, what am I doing? But you realize what's at stake and you remember what you're working for and you just gotta jump in the cold pool and start swimming. And
Was it cold?
It was pretty cold most mornings. Yeah. That's the part that I don't miss the most.
Was there ever a moment, did you ever have one of those days? You're like, you know what? I'm going to go get an egg McMuffin.
I never did. Nope.
So skipping back forward again now, this was one of my questions. Was there a moment where you thought, holy shit, this actually worked? Was it that when you ended up out in Colorado Springs with all those, high level swimmers or?
Yeah, I think the moment where it really hit me was when I was at a US Nationals meet, and I was able to make finals and I was able to really start competing at such a high level that I had always dreamed of. I think that that's really when it hit me of I am a serious contender in the swimming world, and people started to know my name. And then from there, I just use that as motivation. And I remember I'd almost obsessively track the stats of other competitions' times, my times, what I needed to do to get there. I'd make, I'd get a big poster board and I'd write down my goal times every single season. That way I could look at it and have that visualization just to keep me moving forward. So I definitely had quite a few different kind of pinch me moments of almost of I made it in a sense. Yeah.
Because whether it's the corporate world, the athletic world, there's a lot of times people are never satisfied with where they are. Was it like, okay, well, I did this, great, now I have to do that. Was there that feeling of constantly having to chase more, or were you able to take stock and just be like, hey, this is where I am, I'm kicking ass, I'm happy? Where were you? Like, what was the thought process for you?
That's a really great question. I think there's a little bit of everything for me. I do feel like at swim meets when I was performing well and I was getting on the podium and setting records and things like that, I think that I had a lot of gratitude and reflection on the work that was paying off for me. But I also would come away from those if I lost or I made a mistake of any sort. And it was a lot of, well, now I need to work harder so that doesn't happen again. So there was a lot of learning throughout that process too, and always being hungry for the next thing.
How hard on yourself were you when you lost or when you made a mistake?
I was extremely hard on myself. Yeah, I would almost beat myself up over any sort of loss. And that was especially when I was younger. As I started to get older, I started to develop a more sportsman-like approach of, if this person beat me, like, they must have worked their butt off because I worked so hard and I still lost. And so I had a lot of respect for people who would beat me, and I would use that as also motivation. So I think over time I got better at not beating myself up as much and giving myself some grace and actually being proud of myself. But I also tried to use that to my advantage as well, of just, I got to work that much harder.
I think that's a great attitude. I mean, because the sports that I played, I would be furious with myself. Like, if I got beat, I got beat. But I would just be so angry with myself if I played bad, and I know this is a kind of personal moment. I don't mind if I share this, but it meant a lot to me that I was playing racquetball with like a really high level player. I don't know why the hell I thought I was going to beat him anyway. I mean, this is his thing, and I played well, but he kicked the shit out of me just, because that's what he does. And I was mad, I like hit my leg with the racket and all that. And we're sitting out there and I'm fuming, and he looks at me and he goes, you're a good person. You're a successful person. What do you care if you lose a couple games of racquetball? And I was like, yeah, what do I care? I mean, it was like, the lesson was learned when the teacher appeared. And I think everything changed. And his name's Kelly King. He's a brilliant racquetball player. So I'll just put that out there. But it sounds like you got to that point a long time before I did. And that probably helped shape you to some degree too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I did try to showcase to the younger generation too, because I did have a lot of younger kids looking up to me, just because I did come from such unusual circumstances of the hotel pool. And so people knew me when I was out on the pool deck and competing. And so I always had the mentality of there's eyes on you, and there's people who are looking up to you, and I don't want to show them that losing is the end of the world, because it's not. It's everyone loses one time or another.
Yeah.
And just how I carried myself through that too. I give my parents a lot of credit as well, because they're the ones who made me realize that I did have a lot of people looking up to me, and it matters how I react to failure, and they taught me how to use that to my advantage.
And it matters how other people see you reacting to that too. Like those, you never know who's watching, and these kids that look up to you, and and if a kid is listening right now and thinks they can't succeed because they don't have the right setup, or, oh, well, my parents don't have that kind of money, I'm not going to be able to do this, or, any number of things. And, I've seen there's a lot of kids out there that have a massive amount of talent that go nowhere because they think their talent is going to carry them through. What would you say to those kids?
I would tell them, if they have a dream and they have support, then they can really make anything happen. I do feel like my story is a true testament to not having the best training facility or the best resources in general, and just really using what I had available to work for me. I think that if you really want it, then you're going to put in the work, and you can absolutely outwork other people who have way more resources at their disposal.
I think that's a great answer. Do you still swim?
I always get this question, and I don't. I got fairly burnt out in college. Like I was saying, college is a whole nother beast, just between studying and training and being on the road. It definitely takes a toll. So unfortunately, I feel like I got pretty burnt out, especially my senior year there. So I don't swim anymore. I do swim lessons occasionally with younger kids, which is super fun, just teaching them how to love water and how to be safe in water. And yeah, I wouldn't totally discount it. I think swimming is such a great sport for exercise, but I don't think that I'd ever get back to the level that I previously was at.
That made me think of something. So I want to make sure that I asked this correctly so that I'm not accidentally bad-mouthing anybody. But, you talking about being burned out on the sport that you absolutely loved and chased and worked hard at your whole life because of college. I mean, obviously there was a lot on your plate and there was a lot to do. But do you feel that the program was self-serving? Do you think that the program looked out for the athletes to help, insulate them or protect them so that they don't lose the fire for the sport that they love? What are your thoughts on that?
I will say that the NCAA does have restrictions in place to how many hours athletes can train, but that doesn't mean that there's not optional practices at times where, if you want to get better, then coaches will hold additional sessions, whether that's swimming or weightlifting, whatever it may be. And so I think the NCAA and the college institutions do try to protect athletes, but I also think that the coaches there, especially at the level of UCLA, that they want to win and they want their athletes to win. And so I think that, they know what it takes to be at that level. And oftentimes it's more than 25 hours, which was the standard that was in place. I don't know what it is today. But I think that there is a little bit of like self-sabotage as well. It's a lot on my plate. You go from Colville, Washington, which has 5,000 people, to Los Angeles. And I went when I was 17 years old. And it was such a culture shock to me. And so there was that piece. There was the swimming piece of really swimming with a team and a coach for the first time, which was totally foreign to me. And then there was the classes at UCLA. UCLA is an extremely competitive university. I think they're the number one public university in the nation. So there's a lot of competition in terms of classes. And so that was tough for me to figure out. I came from Colville, which I think has like 2 or 3 AP classes. So it was a big shock for me. And it wasn't the easiest transition. So I think that there was a lot of internal pressure on my side to make sure that I succeeded in all areas. And if I felt myself stretched very thin, especially freshman and sophomore year. And then over time, I started to learn how to manage my time better and just find ways of studying that were effective, just things like that. So it just took time for me to kind of get in the rhythm of things. So I think all that to say, I think there was a little bit of both in terms of pressure from the school, but then also pressure from myself.
Okay. So you had to find some balance. And I mean, because you pushed yourself hard physically, mentally, academically. How did your concept of wellness evolve? Like you obviously had to do something to like ground yourself and take care of yourself. What were your rules for doing that?
I think my rules to myself were just realizing what was important. And the biggest one being was sleep. Especially freshman and sophomore year, you think that you can go to practice off just a couple of hours of sleep because you're up studying the night before because you had a midterm the next day. And I used to think that I could sustain that, but I quickly realized that that is not healthy and it doesn't help your academics. It doesn't help your athletics. And so I really realized the importance of sleep and nutrition because we did have a nutritionist at UCLA. So I think that that's really where I started to develop better habits. But then you also have the dining halls, which are always a temptation. So I think just learning to fuel myself correctly and get, better rest really helped me make it through because I did start feeling just totally exhausted about halfway through into my junior year.
So what were your sleep practices? Like how many do you say, I'm going to go to bed at this time? And how did you make that happen? Like I can imagine UCLA campus it can be a loud place.
Oh yeah, it can definitely be loud. I think that I would go into the week and plan out my week. And so I would say, okay, I have a test this day. I need to absolutely make sure that I'm going to bed by 9:30 this night. But maybe, the night before, I'm able to stay up a little bit later if I need to study. So I think making a plan and sticking to it, and this kind of comes back to the self-discipline piece of just making a plan and actually sticking to it, no matter what. It's like, well, I could go hang out with my friends, but I also know that I have all these things that I need to do. So just making sure that I had a plan and I was able to stick with it helped me just mentally feel better about the process. And then in turn, that helped me sleep better at night. And then it also helped me perform better.
And you said you had to kind of stay away from the dining hall, which what did you eat? Like, how did you plan that?
Yeah, it was tough. So I lived in the dorms, freshman and sophomore year. And so luckily UCLA had really great food options. And so we were able to work with a nutritionist to she would let us know which dining halls were better than others and what to eat and what to look out for. And so having that was super helpful. I think it was even harder when you were off campus and you're really cooking for yourself. And just again trying to make sure you're getting enough protein for all the hours of working out that you were doing was tough, but it was much easier with a nutritionist giving some guidelines along the way.
I would love to have had that.
Yeah.
So what about now? Like you've experienced a lot and, pushed yourselves in ways that most people don't. How do you take care of yourself now? Like what do you have a wellness philosophy?
I would say my wellness philosophy is similar to college, just of making a plan each week and actually sticking to it. Obviously, it looks a little bit different nowadays. I'm not forced to go to the gym, and I was telling you about this earlier. I look back at all of the hours that I used to put in for swimming, and now it's like almost harder for me just to work out an hour a day. But it's like if I tell myself I'm going to do 4 workouts a week, then I'm actually going to stick to that. And again, just like making sure that I'm getting 8 hours of sleep so that I can perform well at my job and just making sure that I manage my time well. I think that especially with social media nowadays, it's so easy to spend a lot of time on your phone or watching TV. So just making sure that I'm intentional day in and day out and I don't feel like I really waste days. I always want to make sure that I'm moving forward. And again, that really brings me back to my days in swimming of just being super intentional because I didn't have a lot of time to hang out with friends or watch TV or anything like that. So it's like you really had to be intentional and be present and in the moment of what you're doing. I do think that so many people get so distracted on what's next for them that they forget of like what they're currently doing. And to me, it feels like a wasted opportunity, especially when you're in athletics and you're swimming or running or whatever it is, and your mind is elsewhere. And it's like you're not fully present. You're not fully aware of what you're doing in that moment. And I think that is something that I got so good at in swimming was being hyper aware of exactly what I was doing then and not worrying about what was next for me.
I think that could be exercised in a lot of ways, like being with family. It's like be present in the moment, and like I've seen you go out to eat and there's a whole family there and there's 4 phones out and nobody's talking and they're all looking at their phones. It's like, is anybody actually there?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that was a big thing for me too when I was growing up. Like I mentioned, I didn't have a ton of screen time. I didn't really have a phone until, I don't know, probably high school or so. And so I think this day and age, it's much easier for kids to get distracted and compare themselves on social media. And Instagram was really taking off when I was in college. And I realized how toxic it was, not only to me, but everyone around me. And so I made the decision to delete Instagram for many years in college just because I found myself comparing myself to others. And people don't realize that things on social media are never the full scope of the situation. They just like to post the highlights. And I think it's very easy to compare yourself and kind of get down on yourself if you don't have one thing or another. So I do think that I had almost that to my advantage growing up is not having the social media because I do think it is such a big distraction and can be detrimental.
Absolutely. Now, going back to swimming and hell, even going forward, social media is notorious for body shaming. Did you ever first of all, did you ever experience that? I mean, were you obsessed about your weight or worried that you weren't slim enough or just, oh, I don't look good enough to be walking around in my bathing suit or
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. Swimming especially is such a, lack of a better term, such a revealing sport because you are in a swimsuit. And I think that the kind of picture perfect swimmer type is tall, lengthy, slim, very little body fat, and I'm definitely more bulky. I did lift a lot of weight, and I tried to be strong. It wasn't the goal was never to be skinny. I always knew that for me, I performed better if I had some muscle on me. And so there was a lot of I wouldn't say body shaming, but there was a lot of awareness on how you looked in a swimsuit. And it can be tough when you're that young and you're already comparing your body type to other people's. And it took me a long time to realize that, not everyone's body type is the same, and you don't have to be like super slim to perform well. And yeah, it took me a long time to learn that. And I think even more so in college, that's where a lot of body shaming almost happened. It happened from coaches. It happened from other athletes. It's a tough environment, especially in such a sport like swimming, where you're in a swimsuit. So
Yeah.
it's a tough world, especially for a female, and everything is so hyper aware on how you look, and really, I think people need to realize that it's more so about how you fuel your body to perform than just trying to look one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's easy to say,
It
because
is. Yeah.
it's applying logic to an illogical situation, like the kind of, and this is getting totally off topic, but since we're here, like the whole concept of bullying has changed so much since I was a kid. I mean, if bullying meant somebody shoved you in the hall, somebody got in your face and did something, but it is so different now. Like, talking about body shaming, I mean, how shaming is it when you post a picture and some other asshole, oh, look how fat she is, or
Mm-hmm.
says something shitty like that? I mean, that's hurtful.
It's very
And
hurtful. And I think it's so much easier on social media for people to do that because they're not saying it to your face. It's just,
yeah,
they're in their room alone and they can post whatever they want with what they think is no consequences. But especially as such a young kid, like that can be extremely detrimental.
yeah.
And so I think, yeah, social media at such a young age is tough.
I think it's so incredibly polarizing because like you said, like, oh, you post the highlights so you can show everybody how, your charmed life. But at the same time, that's when all the lowlights come out too.
Hmm.
When, all these nasty comments, or you equate the entire person to some view that they have, or some post that they made, or something that they said, and and reduce them to that one thing.
Yeah.
And it's just it's actually getting hard to look at, especially like right now. There's so many people out there hating each other,
Hmm.
and like part of the reason part of the reason I want to do this show is just like, if you take the time and sit down to talk to somebody, really talk to them instead of looking at their shit on Facebook or whatever they're doing, you're going to find some common ground. You're going to find something that you both care about,
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm off my soapbox. This is for you, not me. So, Emma, I don't have anything else for you. So unless you've got something else you'd like to talk about, I think
No, this has been a really great opportunity. And like you said, I think once you really do sit down and you're able to get past the surface level, people really do have incredible experiences to share. And I think that having conversations like this is getting lost because, again, people just like to show the short reels of their life that just highlight all the great things. And I think there's a lot of almost like lost art of putting in the hard work and not doing it just to show people, doing it for yourself, and really putting your mind towards something and having a goal to achieve, and just having that sense of accomplishment is something that's almost rare nowadays. And so I think that it's awesome that I was able to come on this show and share my story. So I really appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. I mean, and you do have an incredible experience, and I really appreciate you sharing it. And I hope that you continue to do that. Like, go to the gas house and mentor these kids, because you have a lot to offer them. And you are definitely somebody that I would like to see them look up to.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Emma.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that'll about do it for this episode of The People We Meet. But before we wrap up, I want to give a huge shout out to my main man, J-Mac, over at Studio 42 Recordings. I couldn't do this without you, brother. And much love to my family for their constant support. And most of all, thank you, the listeners. This show exists because you keep showing up, and I don't take that lightly. And if you like what you hear, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Give the show a follow and spread the word. And if you know someone with a story that just has to be told, or if that someone is you, drop me a line at thepeoplewemeetpodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and be good to each other.